Animists see God in God incarnate. Animists see God incarnate in the minions of spirits that inhabit animal and tree, rock formation, plant, river, and lake. A Hindu may see God as a dreamer, dreaming this moment that we're in right now. The dream consisting of everything that we know from the Big Bang forward. And when Brahman wakes up, the dream, all that we know of the cosmos, will be over. And then Brahman will start dreaming again, and a new universe will come into existence. A Muslim believes that Allah is the source of all that is, and only Allah, and that Allah is guiding history towards its end. A Jew or Christian may well have the same notion of God ensconced in human history and working it toward a more just epic. But since the age of reason, Jews and Christians in Western civilization have retreated from much of their previous theologies in the face of science and the elevation of reason to the greatest of all human faculties. As a result, the God most of us grew up with in this culture was a God of the rational mind governing the universe with natural laws that follow what we learn from science, and who is far removed from the intricacies of human life and relationship. There was still a little room in this God as a rational mind overseeing the universe for God to jump in and answer prayers or somehow help us out a little bit, or at least we didn't mind the contradiction that created with the rational mind. We could handle small contradictions with reason so long as they were for our personal benefit. Otherwise, what use is a God so far removed and so locked into the laws of nature as to be impotent when we need a God most? The God we inherited from this age of reason was much more like a cosmic engineer or architect who created something and then backed away and allowed it to work without any real maintenance. This was a huge contrast with all previous ideas of God, whether Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, or Zoroastrianism. Those gods were creative and powerful and influential in the human community and even in nature. What good is the God of reason except that it makes for a better argument when attacked by rationalists or atheists for whom truth is only truth if it can be replicated in the laboratory? Now look, you and I don't have a chance in hell of ever understanding or even imagining what God is really like. Human history is a whole series of long stories about the human encounters with the holy. These stories, they don't tell us much about God, but they do describe to us the ways in which human beings have interpreted our encounters with the holy. God is wholly other, totally unknown and totally unknowable, except when and where and how God wants to be experienced. And when and where and how that God comes to be experienced depends totally on how we imagine God to be. It is the logical fallacy of a circular argument, but it is also the reality that we are stuck with. The God we seek is the God we find. The God we seek is the God we find. If our God is this God of reason who built the contraption who built this whole contraption upon the rigid laws of nature that will not and cannot be altered, even by God, then we will not encounter God except through that pleasant idea that behind the beauty and the awe of nature, there's a creator. If in fact we desire to encounter God, to experience God, then we need to imagine that God is quite different. In a way, we're all playing blind man's bluff in an utterly dark hallway, hoping to put our hand upon the hand of God in the dark, or find that door with a peephole through which we can catch a glimpse or a view. We run into each other in the dark and share what little scraps of information encounter we've had, like the blind man describing the elephant, with one proclaiming it's like whatever body part he happens to be holding: the tail, the trunk, the tusk, the leg, the side. For what it's worth, my description, from having felt my way this far in the dark and having bumped into people and occasionally bumped into the holy along the way, is that God is like a jazz musician. I mean that God improvises upon the whole realm of notes that God has established to provide order and opportunities and endless variety. In the realm of music that we actually know, there is already a whole universe of notes and rhythms organized in a variety of patterns by different cultures throughout history. So taking that analogy or metaphor, God improvises on any and all patterns previously established with fortunately rendered outcomes. God may even make music in the universe that is not pleasant and may not be worth repeating. But such improvisation is not a mistake, as there are no mistakes in art, simply learned and revealed creations. In my imagination, for what it's worth, God is the creator who is still creating, improvising upon the patterns that previously established, but not limited to what has been, and always, and who is always, always, always opening and creating and envisioning new opportunities and new riffs of music with our lives. Now, there is absolutely no advantage whatsoever for you to take in my imagination. But if your current image of God or your current imagination of God is not producing encounters, if you are not experiencing God in one way or another, even if ever so subtly and quietly, then you may need a new God. Then you may need to reimagine, reimage God. If you're not encountering God with the God that you're looking for, you may need to reimagine that God.